Morning, guys. This is Monday's reading for Fahrenheit. We are kind of quickly getting through this book, continuing to read. We are at section 3, Burning Bright. So remember that the first section was called something about the salamander, the hearth and the salamander. So the hearth being like the heart of the home. That's what a hearth is. It's usually like a fireplace. And then the salamander, is essentially in this book the fire truck, but it's also like an ancient belief that the salamander could live in fire and was unaffected by the flames. So that was section 1, was the hearth and the salamander. Section 2 was the sieve in the sand, and we kind of remember that metaphor about the sieve with the holes in it and the sand being the knowledge. The sieve is Montag's brain, and he's trying to grasp that knowledge, but it's just draining from his brain. And so now we're at section 3, Burning Bright. So something big's going to happen here. Predictions, obviously. Burning Bright could be a positive or a negative. So, but if you know Ray Bradbury, you assume that it's probably not positive. So, welcome. It is Sunday here at the Cooper house, and I'm in my husband's office again. So, we're going to go ahead and get started today. We're at 107. We're going to go to 115, and then you have a discussion board question that you need to answer. Make sure I get your timelines. All you need to do is take a picture of it. I have like a couple classes where I'm missing some of your timelines, so make sure you get those done. And also I have linked quiz 1 to a Google form, so all you have to do is transfer your answers over from your paper quiz. I'm sorry to make you do that, but I thought we were going to be back before this, so just make sure you transfer those answers. 107. Lights flickered on and house doors opened and all down the street to watch the carnival set up. So Montag and Beatty have just arrived at their newest call, that somebody has books, and the newest call is at Montag's house, so we can only assume that Mildred has told on him. I love how they call it a carnival. The carnival sets up. The firemen set up to burn this house. Montag and Beatty stared, one with dry satisfaction, the other with disbelief, at the house before them, this main ring in which torches would be juggled and fire eaten. A carnival. Fire eaters, torches juggled. I love that they connect this to a bit of like a carnival, like it's going to be entertaining for the people that are going to watch it. And for Montag, for years, it was entertaining to burn books and burn people's things. And now it's his things. So just remember that. Well, said Beatty, now you did it. Old Montag wanted to fly near the sun, and now that he's burnt his damned wings, he wonders why. Didn't I hint enough when I sent the hound around your place? Montag's face was entirely numb and featureless. He felt his head turn like a stone carving to the dark place next door, set in its brighter border of flowers. Beatty snorted. Oh no, you weren't fooled by that little idiot's routine, were you? Now, flowers and butterflies and leaves and sunset. Oh hell, it's all in her file. I'll be damned. I've hit the bullseye. Look at the sick look on your face. And a few grass blades in the quarters of the moon. What trash. What good did she ever do with all of that? Montag sat on the cold fender of the Dragon, moving his head half an inch to the left, half an inch to the right, left, right, left, right, left. She saw everything. She didn't do anything to anyone. She just let them alone. Alone? Hell, she chewed around you, didn't she? One of those damn do-gooders with their shocked, holier-than-thou silences, their one talent making others feel guilty. God, they raise like the midnight sun to sweat you in your bed. The front door opened. So we're talking about Clarice right now, and Beatty is making fun of Montag because they're getting ready to burn Montag's house, and he looks over at Clarice's house, and Beatty goes, You didn't really believe that idiot, did you? The do-gooder that does nothing but makes everybody feel bad about themselves? Mildred came down the steps, running, one suitcase held with dreamlike clenching rigidity in her fist as a beetle taxi hissed to the curb. Mildred! She ran past with her body stiff, her face floured with powder, her mouth gone without lipstick. Mildred, you didn't put the alarm. She shoved the valise in the waiting beetle, climbed in, and sat mumbling. Poor family, poor family. Oh, everything is gone. Everything is gone now. Beatty grabbed Montag's shoulder as the beetle blasted away and hit 70 miles an hour far down the street. Gone. There was a crash like the falling parts of a dream fastened out of a warped glass, mirrors, and crystal prisms. Montag's ship drifted about as if still another incomprehensible storm had turned him. To see stonemen in black wielding axes, shattering window panes to provide cross ventilation. The brush of death's head moth against a cold black screen. Montag, this is Faber. Do you hear me? What's happening? This is happening to me, said Montag. What a dreadful surprise, said Beatty, for everyone nowadays knows, absolutely is certain, that nothing will ever happen to me. Others die, I go on. There are no consequences and no responsibilities, except that there are. But let's not talk about them, eh? By the time the consequences catch up with you, it's too late, isn't it, Montag? Montag, can you get away? Run? Asked Faber. Montag walked, but did not feel his feet touch the cement and in the night grasses. Beatty flicked his igniter nearby, and the small orange flame drew his fascinated gaze. What is there about fire that's so lovely? No matter what age you are, what draws us to it? Beatty blew out the flame and lit it again. It's perpetual motion, the thing man wanted to invent but never did. Or almost perpetual motion. If you let it go on, it'd burn our lifetimes out. What is fire? It's a mystery. Scientists give us this gobbledygook about friction and molecules, but they don't really know, right? Its real beauty is that it destroys responsibility and consequences. A problem gets too burdensome, then into the furnace with it. Now, Montag, you're a burden, and fire will lift you off my shoulders. Clear, quick, sure. Nothing to rot later. Antibiotic, antiseptic, practical. Montag stood looking in now at this queer house made strange by the hour of the night, by murmuring neighbors' voices, by littered glass. And there on the floor, their covers torn off and spilled out like swan feathers, the incredible books that looked so silly and really not worth bothering with. For these were nothing but black type and yellowed paper and raveled binding. Mildred, of course. She must have watched him hide the books in the garden and brought them back in. Mildred, I want you to do this job all by your lonesome, Montag. Not with kerosene and a match, but piecework with a flamethrower. Your house, your cleanup. Montag, can't you run, get away? No, cried Montag helplessly. The hound, because of the hound. Faber heard, and Beatty, thinking it was meant for him, said, Yes, the hound's somewhere about the neighborhood, so don't try anything. Ready? Ready. Montag snapped the safety catch off the flamethrower. Fire! A great nozzling gout of fire leapt out to lap at the books and knock them against the wall. He stepped into the bedroom and fired twice, and the twin beds went up in a great simmering whisper, with more heat and passion and light than he would have supposed them to contain. He burnt the bedroom walls and the cosmetic chest because he wanted to change everything. The chairs, the tables, and in the dining room, the silverware and the plastic dishes. Everything that showed that he had lived there. This empty house with this strange woman who would forget him tomorrow, who had gone and quite forgotten him already. Listening to her seashell radio pour in on her and in on her as she rode across town alone. And as before, it was good to Vern. He felt himself gush out in the fire, snatch, rend, rip in half with flame, and put away the senseless problem. If there was no solution, well then, now there was no problem neither. Fire was best for everything. The books, Montag! The books leapt and danced like roasted birds, their wings ablaze with red and yellow feathers. And then he came to the parlor, where the giant idiot monsters lay asleep with their white thoughts and their snowy dreams. And he shot a bolt at each of the 3 blank walls. And the vacuum hissed out at him. The emptiness made an even emptier whistle, a senseless scream. He tried to think about the vacuum upon which the nothingness had performed, but he could not. He held his breath so the vacuum could not get into his lungs. He cut off its terrible emptiness, drew back, and gave the entire room a gift of one huge, bright, yellow flower of burning. The fireproof plastic sheath on everything was cut wide, and the house began to shudder with flame. "When you're quite finished," said Beatty behind him, "you're under arrest." The house fell in red coals and black ash. It bedded itself down in sleepy pink-gray cinders, and a smoke plum blew over it, raising and waving slowly back and forth in the sky. It was 3:30 in the morning. The crowd drew back into their houses. The great tents of the circus had slumped into charcoal and rubble, and the show was well over. Montag stood with the flamethrower in his limp hand, great islands of perspiration drenching his armpits, his face smeared with soot. The other firemen waited behind him in the darkness, their faces illuminated faintly by the smoldering foundation. Montag started to speak twice and then finally managed to put his thought together. "Was it my wife that turned in the alarm?" Beatty nodded. "But her friends turned it in earlier. Then I let ride. One way or the other, you'd had gotten it. It was pretty silly quoting poetry around free and easy like that. It was an act of a silly damn snob. Give a man a few lines of a verse and he thinks he's the lord of all creation. You think you can walk on water with your books? Well, the world can get by just fine without 'em. Look where they got you, and slime up to your lip. If I stir the slime with my little finger, you'll drown." Montag stood not moving. A great earthquake had come with fire and leveled his house, and Mildred was under there somewhere, and his entire life under there, and he could not move. The earthquake was still shaking and falling and shivering inside him, and he stood there, his knees half bent under the great load of tiredness and bewilderment and outrage, letting Beatty hit him without raising a hand. "Montag, you're an idiot. Montag, you're a damned fool. Why did you really do it?" Montag did not hear. He was far away. He was running in his mind. He was gone, leaving this dead-covered body to sway in front of another raving fool. "Montag, get out of there," said Faber. Montag listened. Beatty struck him a blow on the head that sent him reeling back. The green bullet in which Faber's voice whispered and cried fell to the sidewalk. Beatty snatched it up, grinning. He held it half in, half out of his ear. Montag heard the distant voice calling, "Montag, are you all right?" Beatty switched the green bullet off and thrust it into his pocket. "Well, so there's more to this than I thought, huh? I saw you tilt your head listening. First I thought you had a seashell. But when you turned clever later, I wondered, well, we'll trace this and drop in on your old friend. No, said Montag. He twitched the safety catch on the flamethrower. Beatty glanced instantly at Montag's fingers, and his eyes widened the faintest bit. Montag saw the surprise there, and himself glanced to his hand to see what new thing it had decided to do. Thinking back later, he could not decide whether it was the hands or Beatty's reaction to his hands that gave him the final push towards murder. The last rolling thunder of an avalanche stoned down about his ears, not touching him. Beatty grinned, his most charming grin. Well, that's one way to get an audience. Hold a gun on a man and force him to listen to your speech. Speech away. What'll it be this time? Why don't you belch Shakespeare at me, you fumbling snob? There is no terror, Cassius, in your threats, for I am armed so strong in honesty that they pass by me in an idle wind, which I respect not. How's that? Go ahead now, you second-hand lieutenant-ear. Pull the trigger. He took one step toward Montag. Montag only said, "We never burned right." "Hand it over, Guy," said Beatty with a fixed smile. And then he was a shrieking blaze, a jumping, spiraling, gibbering mannequin, no longer human or known, with withering flame on the lawn as Montag shot one continuous pulse of liquid fire on him. There was a hiss like a great mouthful of spittle banging at a red-hot stove, a bubbling and a frothing as if salt had been poured over a monstrous black snail to cause a terrible liquefaction, and a boiling over of yellow foam. Montag shut his eyes and shouted and fought to get his hands at his ears, to clamp and to cut away the sound. Beatty flopped over and over and over, and at last twisted in on himself like a charred wax doll. And then he lay silent. The other two firemen did not move. Montag kept his sickness down long enough to aim the flamethrower. "Turn around." They turned, their faces like blanched meat, streaming sweat. He beat their heads, knocking off their helmets and bringing them down on themselves. They fell and they lay without moving, the blowing of a single autumn leaf. He turned, and there was the mechanical hound. There's always this debate whenever I read this part of the book as to whether Beatty wanted to die. If you are confused, just real quick, Montag lights Beatty up, kills him. The big question was, did Beatty want to die? I mean, how do you have the guts to talk trash to someone that's holding a flamethrower, who is obviously mentally struggling? How do you have guts to do that? That's exactly what Beatty did. And I mean, there's two different ways to look at it. You could say, listen, Beatty underestimated Montag. And he kept saying he was underestimating. Like, oh, I didn't know you were in this as far as you were. Oh, I find the green little hornet here. Now I'm shocked. I didn't know you had somebody you were talking to. I didn't know you were in this deep. You know, I just sent the hound out to watch you. I think he was underestimating Montag in a way. On the other hand, why would a man harass somebody holding a flamethrower to them? Regardless, Montag has just murdered Beatty with the fire that he had used, the flamethrower he had used to burn his own home. I mean, isn't that a bit of a mind mess anyway, just for Beatty to force Montag to burn his own home down? And also just this idea that Mildred was the one that turned her own husband in. So it's definitely a debate. I want you to think about that. Do you think Beatty wanted to die, Or do you think he underestimated Montag? I also want you to be aware that over and over again, you're going to hear kind of connections to birds, right? When the books are in flames, it's like those ashes that come out are like fluttering wings. When they talk about there's lots of connections to birds, and then there's also connections to insects, like the beetle in the ear and the beetle taxi. I want you to know that animals in this book, Ray Bradbury uses those because animals are natural. Animals are from the earth, and he wants to take things that are not from the earth, such as the seashell radio and the taxi and the books, and he wants to give them an earthly connection. So he describes them as earthly creatures, even though they're not earthly. They were man created. So I think that's really interesting. And he really sticks to this bird connection a lot, especially when talking about books. So what is he trying to say with those connections? We're going to find out. Okay, so here's the mechanical hound. It was halfway across the lawn, coming from the shadows, moving with such drifting ease that it was like a single solid cloud of black-gray smoke blown at him in silence. It made a single last leap into the air, coming down at Montag from a good 3 feet over his head, its spidery legs reaching, the propane needle snapping out its single angry tooth. Montag caught it with the bloom of fire, a single wondrous blossom that curled in petal of yellow and blue and orange about the metal dog, clad it in a new covering as it slammed into Montag and threw him 10 feet against the bole of the tree, taking the flame gun with him. He felt it scramble and seize his leg and stab the needle in for a moment before the fire snapped the hound up in the air, burst its metal bones at the joint, and blew out its interior in a single flushing of red color like a skyrocket fastened to the street. Montag lay watching the dead alive thing fiddle the air and die. Even now it seemed to want to get back at him and finish the injection, which was now working through the flesh of Montag's leg. He felt all of the mingled relief and horror at having pulled back only in time to have just his knee slammed by the fender of a car whirling about 90 miles an hour. He was afraid to get up, afraid he might not be able to gain his feet at all with an anesthetized leg, a numbness in numbness hollowed into a numbness. So the hound comes at him, jumps over him. Montag gets it with the flamethrower, but as he does, the hound's propane needle that comes out of its mouth gets him in the leg. So his leg is numbed. It's kind of like when they do work on your teeth and they do a needle into your gums and it numbs your mouth. That's exactly what this is, but even more intense. So now Montag has killed Beatty. He has killed the mechanical hound, but his leg is numbed. So how is he going to get out of this situation? And now, the street empty, the house burnt like an ancient bit of stage scenery, and the other house is dark, the hound here, Beatty there, the other 3 firemen another place, and the salamander? He gazed at the immense engine. That would have to go too. Well, he thought, let's see how badly off you are. On your feet now. Easy, easy. There. He stood, and he had only one leg. The other was like a chunk of burnt pine log he was carrying along as a penance for some obscure sin. I love that. His other leg is dead, right? Like it's numbed. So he feels like it's a log he's carrying around as penance, as payback for a sin he's done. How cool is that? When he put his weight on it, a shower of silver needles gushed up the length of the calf and went off in the knee. He wept. Come on, you can't stay here. A few house lights were going on again down the street, whether from the incidents just past or because of the abnormal silence following the fight. Montag did not know. He hobbled around the ruin, seizing at his bad leg when it lagged, talking and whimpering and shouting directions at it and cursing it and pleading for it to just work now when it was vital. He heard a number of people crying out in the darkness and shouting. He reached the backyard and then the alley. Beatty, he thought, you're not a problem now. You always said, don't face a problem, burn it. Well now, I've done both. Goodbye, Captain. And he stumbled along the alley in dark. Okay. What a guy, right? He's dipping. He is dipping all of his toes, even the numb ones. So that's today's reading. I just want you to really put yourself definitely in Montag's shoes at this point. Where would you go from here? What do you do? And then I want you to be thinking, why did Ray Bradbury continuously connect these non-earthly things, like the seashell radio and the fire truck and the books, these things that were man-made? Why does he connect them to natural things like insects and birds and animals? And we'll talk about that next time with those connections. So I miss you guys. I hope you're doing well. If you need anything, please email me, and we're going to get through this together. I miss you, and I can't wait to see you again. Have a great day, guys. See you soon.